I used to work the night shift at a small 24-hour grocery store in northern Wisconsin. We were located right off a highway that only really got traffic during tourist seasons or summer camping months. The rest of the year, it was mostly locals. That meant the store was usually dead quiet at night. I actually liked it. I'd stock shelves, listen to a podcast or music, and occasionally help the one or two late-night wanderers looking for snacks, beer, or cigarettes. I didn't mind the silence. That was until last winter. It was late January, the kind of cold where even breathing outside hurt. I was working a Thursday night shift, alone as usual, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Around 1:15 a.m., I was refilling cereal boxes in aisle 4 when I heard the front door chime ring. I looked up, expecting some regular or maybe a trucker stopping for coffee. But no one came in. I walked over to the front to check, and the sliding doors were wide open. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars, no footprints in the snow. Nothing. Just frigid wind blowing snow into the entryway. I hit the manual override button to shut the doors, chalked it up to a sensor glitch, and went back to stocking shelves. About 10 minutes later, I heard the sound of the cooler fans in the freezer section slow down, like they were losing power. Then a loud, metallic thunk, like something hit the inside of one of the freezer doors. Now, freezer noises aren't new if you've worked in a store, but this one felt off. It echoed, like someone had kicked the inside of the door. I went over with my flashlight and checked the entire frozen aisle. Nothing out of place, no customers, just rows of boxed dinners, pizza, and ice cream. Still, something made me uneasy. The air back there felt colder than usual. I know it sounds stupid. It's the freezer section. But I'd worked this shift for months and never noticed that kind of bone-deep chill before. I returned to the front, made myself a coffee, and sat in the security office to warm up. That's when I noticed something on the security monitors. At the far edge of camera 6, which covers the back freezer hallway, I could see a shape. It wasn't clear, just a silhouette. A man, I think, standing near the freezer entrance. He wasn't moving, just standing. The resolution was terrible, and the cameras had a 10-second delay, so I leaned forward, waiting for the next refresh. But when it blinked back, the shape was gone. I immediately went back to the aisle, walking slowly, holding my flashlight like a weapon. Every freezer door was closed. The hallway was empty. But then I saw it. On the frosted glass of the last freezer door, there was a smudged handprint, a large one. It looked wet, like someone had pressed their bare hand against the cold glass just seconds ago. No gloves, no sleeves. And the weirdest part? It was on the inside. I opened the freezer door and checked behind the boxes. Nothing. I checked the storage room behind the freezers. Still nothing. There's no way anyone could be back there. The only access door is alarmed and padlocked, and I was the only one with the key. I decided to call my manager. He didn't answer. I was about to call the non-emergency police line, but I stopped myself. What would I even report? Hi, I think a ghost touched our frozen peas. So I returned to the front and tried to shake it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was just a weird condensation pattern. Maybe I'd imagined the figure on the camera. It was quiet for another hour. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard a soft dragging sound, like something being pulled slowly across tile. I muted my podcast and listened. It was coming from the back again. I grabbed the flashlight and walked toward the noise, heart pounding now. I turned the corner and froze. In the center of the freezer aisle, one of the frozen meat freezer doors was wide open. There was frost on the floor, trailing out several feet like something had recently been dragged across the tiles. There were faint footprints too, bare footprints in the frost. I should have called the cops right then. I know that. But I was trying to rationalize. Maybe a homeless person had gotten in somehow. Maybe I left the freezer door unlatched and a shelf collapsed. I shouted, "Hello!" Stores closed, but my voice echoed weirdly. That's when the lights in the aisle began to flicker, one by one, buzzing overhead. And then the freezer door slammed shut, loud, final. I ran back to the security office and locked the door. My hands were shaking. I turned on the audio feed from the back hallway, and for a few seconds, all I could hear was the low hum of the refrigerators. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, walking past the camera. And then, breathing, deep, hoarse, almost wheezing, right next to the microphone. Then it cut off. I waited for what felt like forever. I didn't call the police. I was too afraid of being laughed at, or worse, told I was hallucinating. Around 4:30 a.m., I opened the office door and peeked out. Everything looked normal. I did a slow lap around the store with my phone flashlight. Nothing seemed out of place. Even the freezer door that had slammed shut was now closed and latched. No frost trail, no footprints. It was like nothing had happened. At 6 a.m., my coworker Sarah came in for the morning shift. I didn't say anything. I couldn't even explain it to myself. That day, I reviewed the security footage from the night before. The shape I saw? It wasn't on the recording. The open freezer door? Never opened on camera. The breathing? Not on the audio file anymore. It was like the whole night erased itself digitally. Except one thing. On camera 7, around 1:26 a.m., there was a 5-second glitch, just static. And then, for exactly one frame, a face pressed against the inside of the freezer glass, mouth wide open, eyes staring directly into the lens. Back in 2019, I was a contract janitor assigned to night shifts at a small private medical clinic in Ohio. It wasn't a hospital, more like a 4-doctor facility tucked between a dentist and a closed-down bakery. The building was old, but well kept. 2 floors, long, quiet hallways, and a basement I avoided unless I absolutely had to go down there. My shift was 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., alone. Usually, I didn't mind. I put in earbuds, listened to podcasts, vacuumed, cleaned bathrooms, took out the trash. No patients, no staff, just silence. Except for the elevator. The elevator was old and slow. Even if you didn't press a button, it sometimes moved between floors, creaking, groaning like it was tired. But it never opened unless someone pressed it from inside. At least, that's what I was told. One Thursday, maybe around 2 a.m., I was on the 2nd floor, mopping the hallway near exam room 4. That hallway has 2 cameras, one pointed toward the elevator, the other toward the fire exit. As I pushed the mop back and forth, I felt this pressure. like someone was standing behind me. I turned around. No one. I took out an earbud. Silence. But then I heard a faint ding. The elevator. I turned just in time to see the doors closing. No one had come out. But they definitely opened. I walked over, pressed the button. It took nearly 30 seconds, but the doors opened again. Empty. I stepped inside, hit basement even though I hated it down there. The doors closed and the elevator groaned into motion. It stopped halfway. Lights flickered. I froze. Then it started again, descended fully, and opened into the basement hallway. All the overheads were off except one flickering light at the far end. I didn't step out. Instead, I hit the ground floor button, waited, and returned to the main level. I told myself it was a glitch. Old elevator, random movement, no big deal. That weekend, though, things got stranger. Saturday night, around 3 a.m., I was in the supply closet restocking toilet paper. I left the door open. It's small, barely space to stand. As I was bending down, I heard what I swear was whispering. Two voices, low, fast, like an argument. I turned off my music and held my breath. Silence. Then the lights in the hallway behind me flickered, and I heard soft footsteps. Not heavy boots, but something bare, like someone walking on linoleum without shoes. I stepped out of the closet, heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. Still, there was something new. Exam room 2's door was slightly open. It's always supposed to be shut and locked. I hadn't touched it. I approached it slowly, pushed it open. Inside was the exam table, counters, a small sink, nothing out of place, except the chair in the corner was turned to face the wall, like someone had been sitting there, staring at it. That chair always faced the door. Always. I closed the door, locked it, tried to convince myself it was just paranoia. But I couldn't ignore the smell, like rust and something else, rotting. I followed it back to the fire exit. Nothing. Then I looked down. There was a line of water. No, not water. Some dark liquid trailing from the doorframe back into the hallway. It vanished halfway down, like it had evaporated or been cleaned up. I checked the security monitors in the break room. Rewinded. Nothing. At least, nothing obvious. But at 2:59 a.m., one camera, the one facing the elevator, glitched. Static for exactly 4 seconds. When it came back, the elevator doors were wide open, then closed again. No one was seen. That Monday, I mentioned all this to the day janitor, Martha. She was an older woman, had worked the clinic 10 years. She just gave me this look. "You've seen it now too, huh?" she asked. "Seen what?" She hesitated, then said, "Don't go to the basement alone." That's all she told me. On Tuesday, I got curious. I brought a small flashlight and decided to check the basement storage during my break. I took the elevator down around 1:30 a.m. When the doors opened, everything was dark. But this time, I stepped out. The hallway was colder than usual. The air had that heavy, still feeling like in an old church or underground cave. I walked past the storage room, past the furnace. Then I noticed something scratched into the wall next to the utility closet. Letters, faint, but clear. Help me. I opened the closet door slowly. Just cleaning supplies, mops, bleach, a broken vacuum. Then, behind the vacuum, I saw a small cardboard box. It wasn't labeled. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were old patient files, real old. Some dated back to the 80s. One of them was for a girl named Annabelle R., age 9, diagnosed with chronic sleepwalking and night terrors, admitted for overnight observation in 1989. Discharged. Never. There was no discharge date. Instead, scribbled in red ink on the last page. Refused to wake up. Refused to leave. That's when I heard the elevator again. Ding. But it didn't sound right. It echoed weirdly down there, like the walls were bending. I ran back, turned the hallway corner, and the elevator doors were open. Inside stood a girl. Dark hair, pale skin, wearing what looked like a hospital gown. She didn't move, just stared at me. I blinked. She was gone. Elevator still open, empty. I ran, took the stairs. Didn't stop until I was outside, breathing in frozen air. I called my supervisor the next morning and quit. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a former co-worker. Martha, the older janitor, had passed away. Heart attack. She was found at work, in the basement. Elevator doors jammed open. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station just off Highway 17 in rural West Virginia. It wasn't a busy place, especially between midnight and 6 a.m. Most of the traffic was truckers, the occasional lost tourist, or locals running on odd hours. We had a small convenience store, a single fuel island, and an auto repair bay that hadn't been used in years. The garage had belonged to the original owner, Grayson, before he passed away in the 90s. They kept the name, but no one dared enter the bay anymore. Locals said it was haunted. I thought that was just small-town superstition until that one night. It was late October, close to Halloween. The temperature had dropped sharply, and a thin fog rolled in across the road. I was halfway through my shift, listening to a podcast with my feet up behind the counter. Nothing out of the ordinary, until the power flickered. All the lights, for about half a second, went off, then came back on. The radio cut out too, but resumed like nothing happened. I figured it was just a power surge. Old buildings do that, especially out here. But then I noticed something weird. The security monitor above the counter. It was split into 4 panels. One for the lot, one for inside the store, one for the fuel pumps, and one for the garage bay. Even though the bay had no working lights and no reason to show anything. The feed suddenly turned from pitch black to slightly lit. It was faint, like moonlight through a window. But I could now make out shapes inside the garage. Dusty shelves, old tools, and something else. A figure, tall, motionless, standing in the far corner. At first, I thought it was a mannequin or leftover equipment. But as I stared, the figure moved, just slightly. I leaned closer to the screen. It turned. It was facing the camera now. I bolted from my chair and locked the front door. I told myself it had to be a glitch, maybe a raccoon triggering some weird reflection. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I tried turning off the monitor, But the garage feed wouldn't shut off. It just stayed lit, watching. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the sound of metal dragging. A slow, screeching noise coming from the garage. I grabbed the flashlight under the counter and walked to the hallway that led to the garage door. The air turned colder with each step. My breath became visible, even though the heater inside the store was still running. The closer I got to the door, the louder the noise became. Something was inside. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. I waited a beat, then slowly opened the door. The room was empty. No figure, no movement. But the garage door leading outside was open about 6 inches. It had been locked for years. I slammed it shut, twisted the rusted bolt lock, and backed away. When I returned to the counter, the garage feed on the monitor was pitch black again. For the next hour, nothing happened. I was shaken, but the lights stayed on, and I tried to calm myself. I even considered calling my boss. But what would I say? A ghost opened the garage? Around 4 a.m., a car pulled up. An old red sedan, early 80s model, no license plate. A man stepped out, tall, lanky, in a worn-out trench coat. He didn't go to the pumps. He walked straight toward the glass door. I stood behind the register, watching him approach. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just stared through the glass, his face expressionless. After what felt like a full minute, he lifted his hand and knocked 3 times. Each knock echoed unnaturally loud in the empty store. I didn't move. Then, without warning, he turned and walked toward the side of the building, toward the garage. I rushed to the back hallway and peeked toward the garage entrance. Nothing. I ran back to the monitor. The garage camera feed was back on. This time, the figure was standing directly under the single ceiling light. His face was obscured, but his arms hung at his sides, unmoving. He was facing the office window. My office window. Then he lifted his head. It was me. Same uniform, same name tag, same tired eyes. He stared directly into the camera, then smiled. I blacked out. When I woke up, it was light outside. My manager was banging on the door. They said I'd locked myself inside, and none of the security footage from that night had been saved. In fact, the garage feed had never been connected in the first place. The camera was dummy hardware, never functional. I quit that day. A month later, I heard the garage was torn down. The land is still there, empty now, but I never drive past it anymore. And sometimes, late at night, I dream about him. The other version of me. Still standing in that garage, watching, waiting.